In this video, I basically want to do another chapter of Heidegger's Being in Time. This is the Macquarie translation. The standby translation is also very good, but this one, personally, is my favorite. Hopefully, my German can get good enough to where I can read the original text one day. But I have a long way to go with that. But anyway, I've done. In the first division of Being in Time, I've done chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and this is chapter 5, Being In as Such, and that's basically what the whole chapter is about, is being in, the being in of being in the world. There's a chapter, about being with, and there's the worldhood chapter, which is very, very famous. But the whole first division is probably the most famous part. So the last chapter of this division after this is chapter 6, which is being as care, which I hope to do soon. So basically what I've done is I've kind of picked out the parts that I want to talk about. I'm only omitting a few things. So first off, we're trying to get at, to kind of give some context in this book. I have quite a few videos about Heidegger, or a good few. So if you don't know about Heidegger, or don't really understand Heidegger, then this is not the video really for you to start with. Corey Anton, his Professor Anton, also Chad Averkin, and Professor Sadler. They have good ones, and also I have a good few things, which I think theirs is probably better. But I have chapter by chapter videos, which those are better than the other Heidegger videos I have. But to get like a good intro to Heidegger, I would go to Corey Anton and probably Gregory Sadler. That would be where I would go on YouTube anyway. But book wise, I would probably go to William Richardson, Hubert Dreyfus, and there's just about a billion others that I can't name off the top of my head. Taylor Carmen also. So to begin with this whole thing, it's talking about the being of the world, or Dasein, as how do we get at that being. It's about ontology, and that we are trying to talk about the ways of being to characterize Dasein, or characterize the man himself, or consciousness itself. I wouldn't use the word consciousness to talk about this, but that's really what it is. We're talking about this ontological link between ourselves and everything else in the world, and other people in the world. But before this chapter, in chapter 4, what basically goes on is talking about being with, as to how we think of things as present at hand, ready to hand, and how we see Dasein in ourselves, and how we see Dasein in things that are ready to hand, that are other than ourselves, and that's how we pick out the other. And he talks about how the other is prior to self. It's a really awesome chapter. I do have a video on that. So to start this chapter, basically what's going on here, we're talking about the primordial being of Dasein, trying to get at it, and what is that? That's care. So care, or Zorga, that the whole thing I would kind of talk about that as would probably be concern, as to in our dealings in the world, we kind of we have concern for them, in our projects, if you will, with respect to our facticity, or our current situations. So to review, we have the being alongside the world, or tarrying alongside, concern, being with, solicitude, and being oneself, the who. This is a investigation that has the aim of a fundamental ontology, to get at the being of Dasein, or the being of ourselves, to figure out who we are, really. That's what the whole thing is about. Being in. What is being in? We have being in the world. So basically we have the whole thing being in the world, and this first division is kind of breaking that whole thing down, talking about the being in, the being with, of the world itself. That's chapter 3, the worldhood of the world. Breaking all this stuff down, getting on, and doing a investigation of fundamental ontology to figure out who we are and what the world is, because the world and ourselves and others are ontologically linked via being in the world. So, being in. This isn't in, like, this isn't in like the, I'm going to use the French words either dans or en, which are talking about being in something. Dans le salon, being in the living room. Somebody's horn's going off. It's not like that. It's not like dans le salon. It's not being in the living room. Thus, it's not all either going into a certain country or into a certain place. Thus, those are just a couple of French prepositions. So this is not in like we can put water in a bottle. It's not that kind of in. It's more the present at handness between subject and the object. It's the designs of being of the between. It's the whole idea of the between. So we need to think about being in as we are basically almost a part of the world, but we're not in it like water is in a glass. It's more that because of this link between this ontological link between ourselves and the world, we are in it and of it. Basically, it's the present at handness of the world, and the present at handness of various things that creates this between. So what is Dasein? Dasein is being there. Da, there, sein, being in German. Dasein is basically the way of talking about the man or a human or consciousness itself. Dasein is its disclosedness. So, what does it mean to be disclosed? So, Dasein and who Dasein is the disclosedness of itself. It's disclosing itself to itself, basically. Disclosedness, disclosedness is mainly a certain thing being made aware, or a certain thing being revealed or disclosed. So hopefully you're kind of getting this. If you are reading Heidegger and you need some help, I guess that's also, I'm doing this not only to possibly help others, but to help myself, because for those of you who have I guess criticisms to make, or things you wanna contribute to my little talking here, or to my understanding of Heidegger or any other philosophy thing I do here. I do it to also help myself figure things out, and to get different perspectives and different understandings from different people to gain. I mean, I'm not gonna brag or boast, but I have a pretty solid rounding of philosophy, and I do have good understanding. But there are things I would love to hear other inputs on, to hear other perspectives and other understandings to help myself. Okay, back to this. Hopefully you can get what being in is about, and if you have a different characterization of this being in that you can give to me, and there's so much secondary literature on Heidegger that you couldn't possibly read it if you lived for 100 years. I mean, it's just, there's so much of it. I mean, that kind of stuff can help you a lot. But being in, that's kind of what I'm trying to think. This being in as characterizing this, and I think of it as a ontological link between oneself and the world. It's it's an ontological unit or link, in that it's not I'm over here and that stuff is over there and you're over there. It's all connected in one being in the world ontological unit, and it's all connected there, and we interpret and analyze our being. Well, Heidegger does via talking about not only myself basically we're talking about myself in relation to those things, and those things in relation to myself, but other being before self. So he goes on to talking about, I guess, state of mind and understanding, which kind of characterizes this being in, as to how, I guess, and also being in is characterized by projected possibility. The things present at hand and ready to hand are basically potentialities or possibilities of Dasein. We project our possibilities on things. We could end up doing certain things via, or as to the way things are. The way things are in respect to us is us projecting our possibilities on them. So, state of mind, thus moods and stuff, and thus understanding. Understanding is basically the very thing of understanding how our relation to things outside of us is our projected possibility or potentiality. Thus, so what is a state of mind? What does Heidegger mean by a state of mind? This is pretty interesting, I think. It's ontically what is ontically most familiar. It's ontically the most it's kind of the way that we, I guess, feel towards things. State of minds can break down to a mood. Being attuned. We all have a mood. We are never without a mood. And he goes into things like bad moods and bare moods, and which I won't really go into here. So Dasein always has a mood, and that's the way in which Dasein is always ontologically placed as being there. The influence on there. Because of the mood that the one has, or being attuned towards certain things, is the way in which Dasein is there. And the mood one has is the way in which one is, and the way in which one is there, influence on there. So, we are never free of moods. Dasein is never free of moods, and Dasein always has moods. And we also have the concept of Throwness, which is the activity of its being delivered over whence and whither one is. Throwness and falling or fallenness is kind of similar to authenticity, and I'll get to how that is. So, facticity. What is facticity? Facticity is a characteristic of Dasein's being, and the Throwness and the facticity is the way in which one is there, and that characterizes and solidifies how Dasein is being in, the there being in. So, the mood, along with being in the world, Dasein can direct itself at something. So, that's how we can relate this to care and concern and Throwness and fallenness. Evasion. Dasein can evade its very self, where directing itself, or where the world matters to Dasein so much, and that's also what falling is: evasion of its own self, or alienation from its own self. It gets so absorbed into the world, more concerned than is then is characteristic of its being. So what about fear as a state of mind? Fear, or Furcht in German, it's the source of which is known. So I'm going to characterize this between. Now this is some good existentialist concepts. This is basically hermeneutic phenomenology and phenomenological ontology. This is also existentialism, in that talk about fear and dread, characterizing fear with dread or angst. Another good thing to read is Heidegger's Was ist Metaphysik, or what is metaphysics, and in there he kind of gets at what the nothing is, and he kind of develops the term angst in the German form. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if the English translation includes the term angst or uses something more like dread. So fear, Furcht. We define the fearsome phenomenally with fearsomeness, or it being threatening. Something that we have fear of is it's threatening to ourself, to our own being. So detrimentality, that's another term to know. The fearsome having detrimentality, or being detriment, or possible harm to Dasein. The target of this detrimentality of what it can affect. So detrimentality is characterized by the striking distance of whatever the Dasein has fear of. It's detrimentality as it gets closer in striking distance, and alarm as fear for something to occur at any moment. So it goes fear, detrimentality, and then alarm. So we also have the possibility of fearing for others and fearing about oneself, and that's more things that you can read on your own. Okay. Then we have dread. Dread is fear of something which is altogether unfamiliar. So, think about how much worse it would be if you had fear and you know what it is, versus fear and you have no idea what's causing it. Now, Heidegger in Was ist Metaphysik talks about how the nothing becoming a part of, or seeping into Dasein's being is a part of what causes that angst, or that angst or dread. And dread plus alarm equals terror. Now these are terms I think are pretty neat to think about. So before I talk about understanding, the being there or being in is a state of mind or mood. And that's the ways in which we can show we can talk about being there or being in as to concern and care and the mood and being attuned towards things, and that can characterize what Heidegger means by being in, and thus the there of being in, the betweenness. So understanding, having to do with things present at hand and ready to hand, thus the external being of potentiality. The being in the world is being disclosed. The being of being in the world being disclosed to it. So then he has this term, which is for the sake of which. Thus, we understand things as having, understanding is mostly understanding things. Basically, the being of being in the world being disclosed to it, in that we understand things as having a projected possibility. Now, things present at hand are characterized as having possible projected possibility. So, or thrown possibility. That's what for things present at hand. That's what That's what understanding is. Understanding things as our projected possibility of design on them, or the potentiality of being of certain things with respect to design. So we have a different thing which I think relates somewhat to Ibn Husserl's experience and judgment, which is the modality or our modal presence at hand, where it's basically what is not yet actual. It's more of a neutral kind of state. Then we have the thrown possibility, which is basically what I was just talking about. So then we have understanding with respect to things ready to hand. And if you don't know what that means, then basically what that is that if something that is ready to hand, I understand a hammer as to how I can hammer things in, or hammer a nail in. I understand a water bottle as to how I can drink from it. Present at hand don't have those things as much. We can't really understand something present at hand as to how I can use it. So understanding with respect to things ready to hand, we have serviceability, usability, and thus the bad one, detrimentality. So projection. The projection of designs being for the sake of which, whether I can't read what I was writing. Okay, I pretty much talked about projection. So then we have sight. Now this is not eyesight, but it's circumspection of concern, or Umsicht. It's the circumspection of concern, or disclosedness of the there. Sight also relates to having common sense of the way things are. Circumspective considerateness, and solicitude, which I've explained in a previous video. So sight in a way is translated with, or is contrasted with transparency and opaqueness. Well, transparency and opaqueness are contrasted, but sight is the way in which you understand the things around you, the way in which you see the things around you, the concern and circumspective considerateness of those things. It's almost a common sense as to how you can kind of understand those things. Transparency. Okay. Also, when we talk about sight, we are talking about circumspective considerateness, or concern, or consideration. We are talking about the things around us. Circumspection is about the things around us, but that also comes in because of that ontological unit of being, as to how this being in the world formulation of fundamental ontology is that it isn't I'm here and that's there, or I'm here and you're there. It's all linked up in one being in the world ontological unit. So sight is the way we see the things around us, but it also corresponds to the way we see ourselves. So transparency is the knowledge of the self, the seizing upon full the seizing upon the full disclosedness of being in the world. So full knowledge of the self and the things around you, and getting the full disclosedness of the being in the world that we all are and have. Opaqueness, on the other hand, is lack of acquaintance with the world and thus yourself. And opaqueness is also, things kind of correspond to authenticity and inauthenticity, or Unmöglichkeit and it's how it's Eigentlichkeit and Uneigentlichkeit. So, what is authenticity? Now, I have a video that is just about these two terms. Authenticity is Dasein revealing itself, thus through transparency and having full disclosedness of oneself, and that's basically, to talk about it away from the Heideggerian talk. Authenticity within the thought of like Charles Taylor and Sartre and following him, we have the thought of basically not conforming to the world, being unique and going your own way. It's almost freedom of Simone de Beauvoir, where inauthenticity is alienation from oneself, Dasein alienating itself from itself, or covering itself up by falling, or this thrownness into the they or the who, or to the other, and just being absorbed by that, by all of that, and thus, while other is prior, you can still have authenticity and thus reveal your own being as you are Dasein. So clearedness, it isn't sight, it's just discloseness of the there. So you can see how there's a good way to uncover the being of Dasein, to uncover the being in and the there-ness of Dasein, and the way to not do that. So I'm omitting in this discussion sections 32 through 37, where Heidegger talks about idle talk, curiosity, and ambiguity. You should go read that as it is important, but I don't want to include it here because it would take me longer than it is already. So, falling relates to inauthenticity and alienation and fallenness and thrownness. Lost in the publicness of the they, or absorption into the world of concern. The being there in the everydayness, the losing of your own self. So, hopefully you can see these ways of being attuned, these states of mind, of mood, and understanding, and as to how this all kind of creates and establishes this fundamental ontology of Heidegger, and thus kind of expounds upon this ontological link between oneself and the world, and how it's all connected into one. It's all connected into one ontological unit, where other is prior. Now, other is prior to Heidegger. We start with other, and then we come towards self. But other is ontologically prior, but through authenticity we can come to uncover oneself. So hopefully this was clear and hopefully easy to understand. However, if it wasn't, I would like you to comment below. And if you have a question, please also comment below, or if you think I left something out, or you think I should have talked about idle talk, curiosity, and ambiguity. Or if if you have anything constructive to say, please comment below, because whenever you comment, I get a email, and that's why I do this, is to talk to people and gain more perspectives and gain more understanding. So thank you. This is definitely an awesome book to read. So next I'll be doing the care as the being of Dasein next, and thank you.